Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna just kind of go through the first 3 months of the year and talk about where I stand like on my reading goals and the books that I liked the most and just like what I've been reading. I am not going to go through every single book that I've read in the past 3 months, January, February, March, but I am gonna hit on my highest rated ones and just like overall what I've been reading. So there's really no other way to intro this, so let's just get started. So my yearly goals include reading 200 books, expanding my genres, reread 5 books, read 50% of my TBR, and read 2 Kindle books per month. So I have read, I think 64 books. Yeah, 64 books within the first 3 months of the year. So I'm on track to reach my 200. Even if I hit a few reading slumps, I should be okay. Expanding my genres. So I typically read fantasy, romance, and thriller. And so far this year I have read 3 sci-fis, 3 literary fictions, and 1 historical fiction. So not a huge percentage of what I've read overall. That's only like just around 10%, 11% of what I've read so far this year. But I am branching out and I am finding that I like literary fiction more and more and sci-fi, and I'm trying to pick up more books like that. So I think that is helping. Reread 5 books. I read 3 so far. I think I've reread the first 3 Harry Potter books so far this year. So on my way to being able to do that. 50% of my physical TBR from the beginning of the year. I am not there yet. I will put the calculation for like the amount of books I read off my physical TBR, like what percentage that is so far, on the screen because I did not calculate that out yet. And then read 2 KU books per month. I have done that. I've read at least 3, I think actually, per month that are exclusively on Kindle Unlimited. Meaning I don't physically own the book as of the time of reading it. So doing pretty well on my goals. Some stats on the types of books I've been reading. In January, I read 22 books, February 19, and in March 23. 34 of those were what I would call fantasy, so that is 53% of my total books read. 18 were romance, so 28%. 5 thrillers, so just about 8%. And then 1 historical fiction, which is like under 2%. Literary and sci-fi both had 3, which is around 5%. So mainly fantasy, but that is not uncommon to start my year that way because I do read fantasies more in the cold months than I do in the warmer months. So I'd expect to see the thrillers and the romances and the literary fiction start to amp up over the summer, and then probably end of the year I'll be heavy on fantasy again, but we'll see, who knows. So those are my stats so far. And then really all else I want to do is just kind of go through the books that stood out to me, my favorite ones from the beginning of the year. So basically my highest rated. In the first 3 months of the year, I did have 8 5-stars, which is, I think, absolutely ridiculous, but I've just been reading, in my opinion, like better books. Like I've been very particular about what I'm buying now and what I'm trying to consume. I want to consume like books that I really think I'm going to rate highly, so I'd say that that's probably why that's the case. I had 1 4.75 and 5 4.5 stars, so we're going to talk about all of those books. We'll go with the obvious ones, I think, first, at least for me, on the 5 stars. And the first one was Onyx Storm. I loved this book. I know not everybody did, and I'm going to say that probably for a few of these, and this is why. These are my opinions and my opinion only. People are going to like what they like, and stories are going to speak to people differently. Your experiences are going to make you either like or hate a book more. And I think that if you read a book at the right time, you're going to rate it higher. So at the time of reading this, I loved it. I took off work. I binged this book. I love the story, where it's going. I definitely think it was more action-packed and less world building this time. We still got a little bit of world building. I think there were a lot of surprises. I think she still has a lot of surprises in store. I am not somebody that sits there and looks for the like inconsistencies and things that maybe are considered plot holes, especially not this early into a series, because it may not be a plot hole by the end of the series. If I enjoy it, if I care for the characters, if I think about the characters, I'm going to rate it highly. And that is how I am for the entire Empyrean series. I think about Xaden every day. He is like my Roman Empire. I can't help it. Like I'll just be sitting at work and he just pops into my head, and then I just go down a rabbit hole in my head about thinking about him and the entire series. So I can't help it, but that is why I enjoy the series so much. It's just there are just characters that are constantly on my mind, and I can't stop it. So that is why. Another book that I don't think anybody that's been here too long should be surprised that I gave 5 stars was Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicarelli. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. It did not disappoint. I enjoyed it so much. I got it a little early from Book of the Month, and I read it because I wanted to read it before people's opinions started coming in. I did see a few people with the art copies talk about it before I got it, and they really enjoyed it, so I wanted to get in there before it got too saturated with people's opinions, and I really enjoyed it. I love the relationship between Gideon and Rune and how they really do hate each other. It is true enemies to lovers, because as much as they hate each other, they love each other, and the push and pull and the whole like cat and mouse dynamic that they had was just perfectly done. This is YA. Some people say it should be new adult. I wouldn't disagree. It's not really spicy, but I just loved the story. I loved this world, and I can't wait to see what Kristen has coming up for us next. A little break from fantasy. The first 5-star of the year I had was The Women by Kristen Hanna, and this follows a specific woman, but it is focused on women in the Vietnam War that served on the front lines, and their experiences there, and then their experiences also coming back to the US in dealing with people that were very angry at America for fighting in this war and taking it out on the soldiers and the nurses and the doctors that were over there. It was very interesting. My father fought in Vietnam, so I did kind of ask him about some of the stuff that was in here, and he did confirm that, like, yeah, that stuff happened, and that it wasn't necessarily that people denied that women were in Vietnam, but they denied that they were, like, on the front lines. So, and that's what this book really covers. Like, these nurses are on the front lines dealing with, like, people coming in from active duty and active battle and all of that, and trying to save lives. So, I really enjoyed this. It was very, like, I did feel like everything that could have possibly happened badly to this girl happened. So there was one point where I'm like, seriously, like this again. But just thinking about her state of mind and how young she was and the decision she was making because of that, I'm not surprised that a lot of the things happened to her, because I have to think back on that now. Like, I'm probably at least 13, if not more years older than I believe the woman was in this book, and I still make stupid decisions. So I can't imagine like what an early 20-year-old was making decisions about back then and in the situations that she was in. So I understand it now that I think back on it, but I did really enjoy this. I was crying by the end. I liked the ending. I think that it all kind of came full circle, and I think that a lot of lessons were learned in this book. So far I'm 2 for 2 on Kristen Hanna books being 5-star. I will be reading Firefly Lane later this month, so we'll see if that holds true for that. I don't know that every single one of her books will be that for me, but I think they're all going to be highly rated. So Smoke and Scar was an arc that I got from Gretchen Palafox, the actual author herself. Like, I signed up through something I saw to get the arc from the author, and it just sounded really interesting. Like, the whole premise of this trials that this girl, Illyria, was entering to save her like deceased lover's sister from succumbing to the same fate that he did, and that she was like this badass female warrior and that she had shadow powers and all of that stuff. Like, this synopsis sounded so interesting that I just was like, please, please let me read this. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The found family in it, the main female character is amazing in this one, and I loved seeing the dynamic swapped between the main female lead and the main male lead, because I think even in Throne of Glass, we see a lot of the main male characters still being very fierce and very sure of themselves and very confident and all of that. And in this, I think Cedric was a little bit confident, but also like he knew that he was in deep at certain times and had to rely on her to save him. So I liked that dynamic. There was a lot of like betrayal. There was like a lot of interesting parts of the magic system, and it's only just beginning, because the way this ended was like a cliffhanger to go into them trying to unite the kingdom, essentially. And that's what the whole point of the trials was, that the person that won would get the crown, and they would lead the kingdom, and they could decide whether to unite the Fae and the humans or keep them separate and be the higher ruler out of the two species. So really enjoyed this one. Cannot wait for the rest of them. I did get this as an e-arc and then bought the book because A, it's gorgeous, and B, I just enjoyed it so much. And I wanted to support the author because I felt like she wrote a phenomenal book. So this was another 5-star. Then I had Wild Side by Elsie Silver. This was a recent 5-star. This is like the only true romance 5-star I had. And I know that there are people that loved the second book in this, Wild Eyes, better, or even Wild Love better. But again, I think this comes to just like what kind of dynamic you like between your main characters and just what tropes speak to you and what dynamic speaks to you. And I just think that this one, I loved both of them. I loved the way their story was told. I freaking loved Tabitha. Like, she was so grumpy, but so funny, and just like, but she was still loving and everything. Like, she really did care about her nephew. So I just love the dynamic of this couple. I liked the story. It was like an interesting story. Like, it's one of us is famous, but like she doesn't know that right away. And the whole like marriage of convenience, it was a very interesting take on that. So I just loved this. I love Elsie Silver. Cannot wait to do the final book in this one. And I have not read the Gold Rush Ranch series yet. I have the first book in that, so I do want to read that this year as well. Wild Card is the fourth book. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that one because of the trope that's in it. And I don't want to give anything away. So if you don't know what that trope is and you want to know, you can look it up. It's out there now. But Wild Card will be an interesting one for me, but I really, really, really loved Reese and Tabitha and their story, and the whole single dad aspect of this was a different take on that as well. So, love the series. The two of the sci-fi books I read so far this year are Red Rising and Golden Son by Pierce Brown, which are the first two books in the Red Rising original trilogy. And Red Rising was my 4.75, and Golden Son was a 5-star read for me. So both very highly rated books for the beginning of a series. I'm going to try to get Morningstar when I'm on vacation this month, because I'm sure I'll be able to find it at a bookstore. And I want to read that as soon as possible because of how Golden Son ended. It was not nice of him to end a book that way. And I cannot imagine having to have waited for the next book. But anyway, this follows Darrow, who is a Red, and he lives on Mars. His people helped colonize it so that others could come live there. And it's really like, this has a very like Star Wars feel to it. Almost like if Star Wars and Star Trek were together, I'd say. Because there is like a lot of technology and everything, which both of them had, but there's like a war going on, which I would say is more like Star Wars, but I think that there are dynamics like of them being on the ships and them working as teams and stuff that are maybe more Star Trek. I don't know. It's basically just like a space war series. A lot of people describe the first book as Hunger Games on Mars. I see that, but it was really just like a trial situation, and they were competing to be higher up in this academy that they're in and to come out at a like higher level than the others so that they got placed higher in society. And then the second book goes into more of the conflict that's going on between all the high houses and everything. The color system is what does the hierarchy in this world. So you've got your reds, and then you've got all the way up to golds, which are the highest level. And Darrow is our main character that is a Red when we meet him in the first book, and basically joins a rebellion to infiltrate the higher societies. That's about as far as I'm going to go with the synopsis, because it gets a lot more deep than that, but that's the overall premise of the book series so far. So very much enjoyed these books. Cannot wait to see how Morningstar is, but it was a great start to this trilogy, which is now going to be a 7-book series, I think. There's 3 out now that are in the second part of it, and then I think Red God comes out later this year, which should be the last book, I think. But we'll see. Another series I have that straddles 2 different ratings on this scale is the first 2 books in the Mistborn series. So Mistborn: The Final Empire and Mistborn: The Well of Ascension. I still have to read The Hero of Ages, which is the 3rd book. Again, probably going to buy that on vacation. Mistborn was a 5-star and The Well of Ascension was 4.5. I just felt like the pacing in this one was a little off and a little repetitive, but Mistborn set up for such a great world, and this was my first dip into the Cosmere other than the Trust of the Emerald Sea book. I did read that, but that's kind of a standalone within that universe, but this brings in a lot of characters and is actually going to tie into the second Mistborn. I think it's the thing, I can't remember what it's called, but there's like 4 books in the second half of the Mistborn series. And then I think I saw that he's going to be releasing like a 3rd part of the Mistborn. So he's been writing these books for forever, and if the world is as good, I cannot wait to get into more of it. I do plan on reading as many of these this year as I can, but they are all chunky books. They are long books. They're tall paperbacks, and then the writing is also very dense on the pages, and itself is just very dense writing because there's a lot going on and a lot to learn. So looking forward to finishing out this trilogy and then moving on in the Cosmere, but so far so good for the ratings. I want to say Trust of the Emerald Sea was even like a 4.5 star. I can't remember exactly. Do not quote me on that, but I read that last year. And I remember being a higher rated book too. So far Brando Sando is a hit with me. And then the final series that kind of, again, merged 2 of the ratings was the Zodiac Academy. I've read 3 of the books so far this year. So Shadow Princess, Cursed Fates, and then Fated Throne. So I'm up to book 7. No, I'm up to book 6. Book 7 I'm going to be reading this month. And Shadow Princess, and Cursed Fates were both 4.5-star reads. I just wasn't ready to give it a 5-star yet because there was still a lot going on that I was just like frustrated with. But then when I read Fated Throne, which is book 6, I adored this book. I loved the storyline. I think there was a lot of pain in this book, but I think that it was what made it what it is, in my opinion, a 5-star read. So I'm hoping that 7, 8, 8.5, and 9, which are the only ones I'm going to read, I'm not going to do the other novellas, I'm hoping that they hold up to what number 6 was, because it was just perfect in my mind. Maybe not perfect, but enough to get a 5-star. There were things that, yeah, I probably would have done differently, but it's their world, it's their characters. But I'm excited to see what kind of pain they're going to put me through in the next one, which I think is like Heartless Sky. Hold on. Please hold. Yeah, I was right. Heartless Sky. And then I'll be reading hopefully 8 and 8.5 in May, and then finishing out with number 9 in June, and finishing that out the first half of the year. I'm slowly buying the books. You can see the first 3 up here. No, you can't. You can't see them, but they're up here, the first 3, and I'm buying them as they're re-released in the new publications. So Shadow Princess is now out now. I just haven't got it yet. Again, a book I'll probably buy on vacation if I can find it. So thoroughly enjoying the series. They're another like part of my Roman Empire. Maybe not as often as Fourth Wing. Maybe not every day, but at least 3 times a week I think about those characters. So they live rent-free in my mind. All right, so the last 3 books I'm going to talk about were all 4.5-star reads, all fantasies. The first was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is the first in the series with the same name by her. It's a 4-book series. I've only read this one. I do own the second one. I just haven't got around to it yet because I have so many books to read. But I really did enjoy this one. I cannot wait to see where the storyline goes. We're following, what's her name? Laya? I don't know if I'm saying that right. And she infiltrates this academy to try to help free her brother who has been taken, and ends up getting really close with the like top soldier at this academy who's like reluctantly part of this movement now because he thinks it's wrong and he wants to like leave it. So the first book was really just about them building a relationship together and building the world, and her trying to learn what she can to help get information to the rebels to release her, like go save her brother from this like prison that he's allegedly in. So this ended off on a little cliffhanger, and I'm very excited to go into the next one. And I don't know where else the world's going to go from here. I feel like there's a lot that she could do with it now that we have 3 more books and she's set the story. So I'm excited to see that. And I do like that there's going to be a picture that it lines up with. I love when they do that. The Rose Hill series is like that too with the mountains, if you got the first printing of them. So very excited for this. I do have Air as well by her, which comes after this series. Almost read that first. Somebody told me don't do that. So I've started this series, and I will read Air when I am done. I don't know how many books that series is going to be. Another 4.5-star was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is the 3rd and final book in the Emily Wilde series, and I really enjoyed this one. It was a cozy fantasy with a little bit of action, a little bit of adventure, and a good storyline, and a wonderful group of characters, and it was just a good time. I can't talk too much about this book, but Emily Wilde is a professor who is just trying to write an encyclopedia of fairies, and this just follows her throughout her studies. And one of her co-workers, Wendell, he's also part of it, and they're kind of like academic rivals, but also like friends, so that dynamic's really fun as well. But really sweet story. Highly recommend if you want a cozy fantasy. I don't always love cozy fantasy. I'm reading one right now that I'm not loving, but I think that these were definitely a good option for that genre if you still want a little bit of plot and action going on. And then my final 4.5-star from the first 3 months was Throne of Secrets by Kerri Maniscalco. So this is Gluttony's book from her Princes of Sin series, which follows the 6 brothers that were not the main characters in the Kingdom of the Wicked. So we had Envy, I think was the first one, and then now we have Gluttony's book. And I loved this. There were dragons. The dynamic, again, between the 2 main characters was like that they just picked on each other and they just knew how to push each other's buttons. And I love that dynamic. That is how Wildside was. I love that dynamic. That is me. I love to like just see how far I can push people, but in a loving, playful way. That's just how I am. I'm sarcastic 99% of the time. So once you get over that. But yeah, I just think that the dynamic between the 2 of them, they were again rivals because she was a newspaper article writer, I don't know why I just called her that, but she wrote for a newspaper, and they had like this interaction years ago, and it left a bad taste in her mouth. So since then she's been writing like smear articles about him, essentially. Not untrue, but she hasn't been painting him in a good light, and so there is a little bit of a rivalry there and a little bit of hatred there. But again, it's very playful, it's very fun. And then there's like a secret going on with the dragons and everything in his land, because each of the princes has a curse on their lands that they have to figure out how to break. And that is what the books have been about so far. Like Wraths was the books of Kingdom of the Wicked. Then Envy had Throne of the Fallen, and now we had Gluttonies and Throne of Secrets. So I don't know who's coming next. I don't know when we're getting the book, but I'm thoroughly enjoying the series. Highly recommend it. Even if you don't read the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy, you don't have to. These are adult. I think that is YA. So keep that in mind. But really enjoying this so far, this series, and can't wait to see who's next. All right, so that is it for the first few months of the year. I was going to do a series update in this, but I think I'm going to do that as a separate video and maybe not right away. I might give myself to like halfway through the year and then do a series update, because there's just so many. But I started the year with 41 series. I do know that. I've started some. I've finished some since then. Do I know the current total? No. But that will come in a video maybe in June, end of June, early July. But I just wanted to give a little overview of like how the reading year's been going so far. Let me know like what have your best books so far of the year been? What's your favorite release so far this year? A few of mine were in here, obviously, but there's been a lot of good books that came out. I have some that are higher rated too that I read in the month of April, so I'm not going to talk about them yet, but we're also new releases this year. And I think it's going to be a great reading year, a great book release year. We just found out Ali Hazelwood is actually releasing another book in like a month. She announced Mate, which is the sequel to Bride, coming out in like November, I want to say. I have that pre-ordered. The other day I was just like scrolling through Instagram and someone's like, she confirmed it, and then pulled up this thing that has Something About the Summer is the name of the title, and it's a romance, and it sounded so interesting, and I will probably talk about it in my next like new release video, even though I already did talk about May, or I'll talk about it at some point. But I'm very excited for it, and I can't wait to see how it is. I've loved every book I've read by her. She is one of my auto-buy authors, one of my favorite authors, and I'm so excited we're gonna get 3 books from her this year. Deep End, this one that I can't remember the name of, and then Mate. So exciting. So again, let me know what your reading year's been like so far, and I thank you all so much if you've made it this far in the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.